company, impunity, you can do whatever you want, but then the day of reckoning comes, and the day of reckoning comes and then it's closed down. 40% of India's copper is in jeopardy today. It's the largest copper smelter in this country. 40% of India's copper comes from this plant in Tuticorin. Okay? Imagine, already we have a very delicate current account deficit. Now 40% copper has been imported by India, okay, because this plant is shut down. So look at the economic cost. But then why are we reaching this level? Well, it's end of sterilite, closed it down. As I said, the government has no solution. The people protest, the government says shut down. Okay, that's it. Close the plant. That's the only solution the government has. Well, those of you who can read Tamil there, this young girl is saying, copper for you, cancer for me. Look at that powerful statement. Okay? Copper for you, copper unakku, cancer enakku. Okay? Why is it that our industry, copper is also a chemical industry. It's basically a chemical processing of copper sulfide ores into copper metals. And if somebody thought that this is something which is one of time, okay, it's a very telling article. It says there are 1,000 Tuticorins ahead. It's a warning. Okay? It's not something that just happened in one place. It's going to happen again and again because civil society has woken up, and you can't keep them silent anymore. And I think that is something that as professionals we have to understand. Well, the problem is that there's a perceptional issue. One is chemistry, other is chemicals. Most of us think both are the same. But actually chemistry has a very nice connotation. Everybody uses the word chemistry. Okay? Alright. If you win an election, it's because of good chemistry between two parties, right? If you lose an election, it is because of bad chemistry between two parties, right? Alright. You fall in love because you have a good chemistry with your partner. Alright. So chemistry is actually a good word. In fact, there is a place called chemistry.com, which is actually a dating site. Okay? So if you want to find a nice date, go to chemistry.com. Okay? It has nothing to do with chemistry. Okay? It only talks about that you get the right chemistry, in order for you to date a boy or date a girl, And therefore, chemistry actually used to describe what I call very intangible forces that result in successful relationship between two or more individuals. That is actually the meaning of chemistry today. Okay? When we talk about chemistry, we are really talking about good relationships, okay, between two people, good vibrations, and things like that. But what about chemicals? Well, they are bad. Okay? They leak, they spill, they leach, poison, they pollute. So everything is bad about chemicals. Okay? And they're also used as weapons of mass destruction. The Russians in UK were actually killed by a nerve gas. Okay? It was so easy to kill by nerve gas, Alright? So, the North Koreans king, the chairman's brother was killed in Malaysia within a fraction of a second, by a chemical, agent, okay? That's what people are scared of. And that's why when I apply for a US visa, they don't give me a US visa, okay? All right? Because they think that I'm chemistry, I can do all these things, all right? Well, what to do? The reason is because chemistry has become invisible to the public. That's the problem today, okay? And it's very poorly perceived by society and has very low public trust, I can tell you that, Those of you who are in industry, you have a town hall meeting, call your neighborhoods and say, I want to expand this factory, will you allow me to do this? The chances are 90% of them will say, no, we don't want to expand our factory here. Okay, go somewhere else. Okay? Chemistry is considered mature economically. It is associated with a lot of negative things that people think about. Good and bad are not balanced perceptions of chemistry. There is increasing pressure from civil society to improve the image of chemistry, increasing regulatory pressures from government, and heightened consumer interest on the impact of chemicals on health, environment, chemical residues in food. Look at how Patanjali's growth in the last 4 years. Okay, why did they grow? Why? How did they? How are they giving? Why is it that Colgate has to make Veda Shakti toothpaste? Huh? I mean, imagine Colgate of USA, making a toothpaste called Veda Shakti. Huh? Why? That's a perception, because Colgate, by the way, invented triclosan. That was considered to be one of the most very successful innovation of Colgate. They made billions of dollars by putting a little amount of triclosan in every toothpaste. It's an antibacterial agent. Okay. Today you cannot put triclosan in a toothpaste. Okay. So now you see no toothpaste says triclosan. Although I think many of them are still using it, but they won't say it. Okay. Because triclosan has been now banned. It actually gets into the guts of all of us and it damages our microbiome. Okay. So now everybody is saying I'm using tulsi, I'm using haldi, I'm using something else, And so all the toothpaste technology from big companies like Procter and Gamble and Colgate, who spend billions of dollars in R&D, are all now coming back to Veda Shakti and other Shaktis, Okay. So that's all, because that's where we are all ending up in terms of technology. Now, why? It's because of the fact that people are concerned. Okay, you are not able to satisfy them that look, what I am giving you is safe. Okay, therefore you want to get all these gimmicks, Well, look at this. This is an iconic company. We all know this, DuPont. I mean, in the chemical industry, if there's one company which is iconic, it's DuPont. This is the logo today, okay, DuPont, okay. In 2000, this was the logo, DuPont, the miracles of science. In 1985, this was the logo, better things for better living. And in 1935, this was the logo, better things for better living through chemistry. Okay, now what they did here, they dropped this word here. Because they didn't want to use chemistry anymore. Okay? Iconic company, DuPont. They thought chemistry means bad press. No, we don't use chemistry. Later on, they even went to say, we are science. We are just science. But now they have eliminated the science also. Now it's just called DuPont. Okay? Now that's the human. Why are they doing this? Because there's a perception they are fighting in the society. Okay, they are fighting a perception in the society. Okay, so this is an iconic company. You can see how things are changing. Well, chemistry is key to sustainability, unfortunately. Although it's all bad press, bad image, but without chemistry, you cannot bring sustainability into the society. The reason is because that there is a lot of, it is basically the what I call the transfer of materials from nature to mankind, and from mankind to nature is what creates this ecosystem balance. And that's what chemistry is all about, And therefore, if chemical sustainability problems are determined largely by this, what is called economy, ecosphere, material flows, it has become imperative that chemists lead in developing the technological dimensions of a sustainable civilization. If anybody can do in terms of this, in terms of understanding sustainability to an extent that we need to, it's only chemists who can do this. And if we do this, I think it may become compelling to the people and may kind of lose this for toxic image. Today we have this toxic image. I think we have to get rid of this toxic image. It will become more worthy of public support and spawn exciting economic enterprises that nurture sustainability. This was written by Terry Collins at Carnegie Mellon, who is a very well-known chemist who works on sustainable chemistry. And what he illustrated is that basically it's an ecosphere which has to learn to live with each other. And therefore chemistry has an important role to play in achieving a sustainable civilization on this planet Earth. Well, we have heard about all these things. I just wanted to talk about this, that green chemistry, people talk about safe chemistry, sustainable chemistry, economically viable and affordable chemistry. There are different terminologies people use. There are different meanings that they have. There are different ways that people interpret sustainability in a sense. All I just wanted to show was that there are many, many terminologies. In Europe, they don't want to use the word green because there is a political party called Green. I hope you know that. And therefore, in Europe, anything green is considered as a political terminology. You know, Germany has a very strong green party. Okay, so in America, people are using the word green. In Europe, they don't want to use the word green. I think whether you call something green, you call something sustainable, is a matter of terminology, but I think it is also something that is preferred by some people. I'll skip this. What is the principles of sustainable chemistry? I don't want to talk about green chemistry because that is related to more of the chemistry of the reactions. But here, when we talk about sustainable chemistry, we are talking about qualitative development, quantitative development, comprehensive life cycle assessment, action instead of reaction, and economic innovation. And I think this is the pillars on which sustainability in chemistry depends upon. I don't want to read this because this is all well known. It is actually part of an international workshop on sustainable chemistry that took place around 10 years ago. Okay, so they have discussed this in great detail. Now, there are also multiple dimensions of sustainability, and I think this most industries are familiar with. The question is, most companies know what is financial sustainability, because that's what is something they're focused on, financial sustainability. They also know something about what is called human capital sustainability. But I think when we talk about sustainability as a whole, we talk about social capital, manufacturing capital, financial capital, natural capital, and human capital. And I think companies are increasingly now trying to balance all these 5 dimensions of sustainability. And they are not easy to do, but I think it's important to think about it across these 5 dimensions and make sure that you balance what you are doing across these 5 dimensions. You know? And I think that is probably the better way of thinking holistically about sustainability in an enterprise environment. Well, sustainability is called a wicked problem. Okay? I need to tell you something what is called a wicked problem. I give a reference for those of you who want to read it later. You know, a wicked problem is one that is having no definitive formulation, no stopping rule. There is a solution that is good or bad rather than right or wrong. You know, it's a complexity which defines such problems. Okay, no immediate or ultimate text of a resolution. If you have a wicked problem, I can't do anything and say after 2 years have I solved this problem or not. It's very difficult to figure out, you know, whether I have solved the problem or not. You know, if it's other problems, I know after a few years whether I have solved it or not, or even after a few months. But wicked problem, impossible to do that. No possibility of learning but trial and error. No well-described set of potential solutions. Symptoms of another problem, causes with no unique explanation, an expectation that its owner will find the right answer. Nobody knows who will, everybody thinks somebody will get the answer, but it's very difficult to get an answer. Okay? The concept of wicked problem has been generally used to denote problems that standard approaches find difficult to define clearly and often impossible to solve owing to their innumerable causes, incomplete or contradictory knowledge, competing interests and opinions and interdependencies. It's a very complex, and sustainability is truly a wicked problem. You know, it's not a linear problem that I can start from here, go through multiple steps and say I have found a solution. Okay? In fact, the list of wicked sustainability problem is potentially extraordinarily long. Climate change, energy generation, water resource management, genetically modified organisms, urban planning, waste disposal, nuclear waste, biodiversity loss. You know, all the major issues that we are facing today are wicked problems. Okay? And therefore, it's difficult to even analyze them. Even for a scientist to analyze them is very difficult. Because, you know, scientists can analyze only problem maybe in 2, 3, 4 dimensions, you know. And now you have multiple dimensions here. How do I optimize solutions across multiple dimensions? In fact, climate change is a classic example. It is truly a wicked problem. And that's why nobody knows who will solve this problem. Okay? We can all talk about it, but nobody knows how this problem will get solved as of today. Okay? It's not so simple that to reduce carbon dioxide, the climate change problem is solved. It's not so simple. Okay? It's much, much more complex than that. Okay? And therefore, how do we deal then with wicked sustainability problems? You know, it's a question that one has to think about. It is not easy, and therefore there is a very well-known American journalist and also a satirist who said for every complex question there is a very simple answer, and it's always wrong. Okay. So, and that's what is sustainability. We all have answers, but most of those answers are wrong. Okay? Because the problem is too complex. Okay. And therefore to say that I can solve this problem by some process that I have in mind, I think it is too elementary in thinking. And I think we must recognize the wickedness of this problem before we say we have a solution. The reason is you are telling the public that you have a solution. Okay? The public does not understand the wickedness, the concept of wickedness. They believe you if you say I will go and solve the problem. But then you cannot solve the problem, you lose your face. Okay? And we end up telling the public, because we think that that's the way we're going to gain the credibility of the society. But saying, no, we're going to solve this problem. No problem. Everything will be all right tomorrow. Okay? But we know we can't do it. But yet we tend to say this to kind of get some mileage in the society. I think that's a greater disservice to society than I think trying to solve the problem. Well, I will leave this. I'm going to quit a few slides because I'm running behind the schedule. Okay? There is a lot of guidelines one you can use when you're talking about sustainable chemicals, sustainable chemistry. And I think today the complexity, and I think M.V.Nimkar was talking about this, and I in a way I articulate, I echo the sentiments here. Okay. Now, you know, how do I know whether a given chemical in a given product is going to concentrate in the environment? Okay. How do I know how far it's going to be transported from the point of origin? How do I know how it accumulates in the food chain? We don't even have diagnostics for these things. We don't even have methods to find out these things today. Okay? Now, this is a problem today. You know, I can do anything here, you know, but the consequences of the action is maybe 10,000 miles away, you know. I may not face the consequence in my own neighborhood, but 10,000 miles away, there will be a consequence. And that's the problem. How do we even analyze these things if you really want to talk about true sustainability? And therefore, today, you know, the supply chain, which is most people in industry will understand this, what I call a supply chain, is becoming more and more, you know, accountable. You know, it's not enough to say that I'm doing it right. It's important to know whether your suppliers are doing it right, your suppliers are doing it right. You know. It's no longer say that, no, I am complying with all the laws of the land. Okay, it's not enough. Because you also have to worry about who else is not complying with the laws of the land. Okay? And where does, in your chain of supply, where does he lie? And what is the consequence of his non-compliance on the sustainability of your enterprise? And this is something that, today in many risk management framework which most companies use, we use this framework to understand, whether there's a risk of my supplier not conforming himself to certain, processes and systems that I wish to conform myself with. Okay, so this is a question, and this has implication to everybody, down the line. So very often the large companies sit on the top, the medium-sized companies sit in the middle, and there are small and medium enterprises who are at the bottom, who are actually feeding these larger companies, with supplies. And therefore, this chain of responsibility in terms of sustainability extends throughout this chain. Okay, it is just not dependent upon one or the other. Well, that's what I say here, that many of them are now using sustainability metrics to decide whether I will buy from you, whether I will not buy from you. Well, the problem is that there is, chemical industry is over-regulated. Okay? Somebody says over-regulated and under-governed. Okay? All over the world, it is over-regulated, under-governed. Okay? You will see every other day some new guidelines are coming. Okay? I just list here. In fact, that I can go on with another 2 slides. Okay, if you want to. Okay, I just list some things. In fact, most cities of the world have become famous because of chemistry. Okay, Montreal, Kyoto, Stockholm, Rotterdam, Basel, Helsinki. Okay, so all of these places in the world have become famous because of chemistry. Okay. Because we recognize these regulatory frameworks by the name of the city, okay? And there are, like Minamata is kicking off right now in 2019, the Minamata Convention. So it is one by one, everything is now coming, and I think this is going to increase, okay? There will be more cities of the world, you will hear about them in the future, okay? So this is not going to end here, it's going to increase. And I think today the best judgment is that chemical industry's profits are at risk to the extent of 50% on account of having to comply with an ever-increasing, expanding list of regulations. Okay, that's the impact on the profitability of a chemical company. In order to fulfill these sustainability goals, they have to take a hit on their margins. Okay. Well, there are many things, in the game that we talk about, you go and open up any regulatory body, they will say, what is the CMR properties, what is the PBT, these are all new names are coming, in the lexicon of chemistry. We didn't know these names 10, 15 years ago, okay. What is ecotoxicity, how do you measure ecotoxicity, what is the spatial range? This is a question that now people ask, in many regulatory bodies. What is the spatial range? Okay, is it narrow or wide? You have to answer these questions. And therefore, if you cannot answer these questions, the chances are that, somebody is going to come after you. Okay. Well, I'll skip a few things in a minute because I'm running a little short of time. Chemistry, unfortunately, has been a victim, what I call unintended consequences. Okay. Every time we started doing something, we said, oh, it's very sustainable. Therefore, we said, we'll do it. But 10 years down the line, we realized that we underestimated something, and there is an unintended consequence of the sustainability. And this is because of this wickedness of the sustainability problem. We are not able to anticipate every problem and factor that into our decision making. And because of that, we keep on committing mistakes. And the society doesn't care. They don't care. You can't say, no, it's too complex, please allow me to make a few mistakes. You know, I mean, they don't care. You know, they just say you can't make a mistake. You see. Now, the problem is that is the unintended consequences of chemistry is always wisdom in hindsight. We are all wise after the event has occurred. Okay? We know exactly why it happened, why it should not have happened and everything, but we could not predict that event ahead of time. Now, especially when it comes to the biological imprint of chemicals on the human systems, but on human systems, on mammalians, on amphibians, whatever you call it, is something is such a gray area today. Okay? We don't even know how to predict this. You know, if I'm introducing a new chemical in the environment, how do I know that it's going to be safe to the humans, it's going to be safe to the fishes, it's going to be safe to the animals? There is no predictive tool available. Okay? And therefore, it's very difficult even, you know, in fact there is a beautiful paper, you know, the kind of new heuristics that are emerging to prioritize human exposure to chemicals. You know, you can't do by rational science, you have to have data analytics, you know, and big data analysis to do this, and people are not trying to bring that into some kind of a systematic method, but I think it is a challenge. In fact, is there an approach to redesign chemistry to avoid the unintended consequences and protect the future? Answer is maybe, but not, I'm not sure. Okay, because we don't know too many things about chemistry today that we can say for certain that what I am doing today is not going to make an impact on this planet in the future. Okay, and that puts us on the defensive. That puts all chemistry people on the defensive. You know, so we are saying maybe it is safe. It could be it's safe. So you know, so that's one of the ambiguity that the society is confronted with. Well, I just show you one of those things which I think many of you are familiar with. What happened in the US, you know. I mean, when the US started making ethanol from corn in large quantities, what happened? You know, what happened? A lot of corn went to make ethanol, so there was a corn shortage. So the Brazilians, what they did, they were growing soybeans, so they killed all the soybean field and they started growing corn in order to supply to the Americans. Okay. Now, farmers in Brazil plant soybean in land which is previously used as cattle pasture lands. So all the cattle pasture land disappeared because everything went to corn soil. Okay, and that in order to do that they had to clean forests. So the Amazon forest was cut by the people in order to make the grazing for the grazing of the cattle, because they didn't have the grazing land. So they had to create the grazing land, so they cut the forest. And so what was a forest, it became like this, in Amazon. Now this is, nobody believed that when Americans said that we are going to make ethanol out of corn, nobody believed that it is the wetlands of the Amazon forest that will be lost, okay? I mean, nobody could think about this. Now there is a question, is it the right thing that we have done? Give you another example, it's a living example today. Europe has gone gung-ho on biodiesel, okay, saying it's sustainable. Okay, 3.9 million tons of biodiesel was consumed in Europe, in 2017. 50% of the biodiesel was generated from palm oil. All the palm oil came from Malaysia and Indonesia. And what now we know that thousands of acres of forest lands are cleared for cultivation of palm oil in Indonesia and Malaysia. Okay? This is what I said. This is actually the tragedy of the commons. True example of the tragedy of the commons playing in real life. Okay? They want livelihood, they want money, so they are exporting it to Germany, so they are removing their forest lands. Okay? Similar arguments can be constructed for ethanol from sugar cane. This country is promoting, I think, the stupidest idea. or for that matter, anything that you are making from, sugar cane, because sugar cane is an unsustainable crop, I mean, it takes 100 kilograms of water to make 1 kilogram of sugar cane. And from 1 kilogram, I get 0.5 kilograms of ethanol, I'm sorry, it's 0.5 kilograms of sugar, and from there I get something like 300 grams of ethanol, and I use 100, kilograms of water. I mean, how is it sustainable? But then nobody is concerned, because this is ultimately the water table is going down. There is a crisis of water in the country, and after 10 years, 15 years, when the water is not available, then people will wake up. But today we are not able to make very informed decisions, on this matter. Look at what happened in Malaysia. I don't know whether you've heard of this, what is called the Malaysian haze or the Indonesian haze that comes. What happened is they were burning forest land in order to clear it. Okay, and vast tracts of land were set alight to clear the way for the production of palm oil, because Europe was buying all the palm oil. In fact, carbon dioxide emissions from the Indonesian forest fires exceed the annual emissions of major economies such as UK and Japan, just for burning the forests. And look at it. This is a picture that you can see in the summer. Okay, they are burning the forests, the hot spots in the picture, and Indonesian fires, in Sumatra, Kalimantan, and Papua, which are the islands on the Indonesia, where this land is being burned, the forests are being cleared in order to plant palm oil, in order to supply to Europe for making biodiesel. All right? And this is again an unintended consequence. I mean, you are destroying the biodiversity of this world. I give you one more example, which is very relevant. It's close to my heart because I've been talking about it. We all want to use silicon, for solar energy, and we think it's a green energy. We tell everybody it's a green energy. I tell you, it is the worst manufacturing process to make silicon that we are dependent upon. Okay? Silicon from sun to energy is green, but have you ever thought how do you make that silicon? It's the most unsustainable chemical process that I can ever think of. Okay? But we are committing large amount of our infrastructure to a material which is produced very unsustainably, and we are not bothered. Okay? Again, I give you an example. Okay? If you look at solar PV, every ton of manufacturing grade silicon produces 4 tons of silicon tetrachloride, for which there is no use. Okay? And it's very difficult to dispose of silicon tetrachloride. Okay? Material utilization efficiency in silicon production is 30%. Atom economy, equivalent of an atom economy. Okay? In green chemistry. Humongous amount of energy is required to make silicon. I don't want to talk about it. Okay? 1 ton of crude silicon production releases 10 tons of carbon dioxide. And much of this energy is coming from coal in the world. So a lot of coal is burnt to make silicon in order to make green energy from sun. There's something wrong somewhere in our thinking. Silicon uses, of course, let's forget about that. Second also, I don't mind, uses a lot of toxic chemicals. Hydrogen fluoride, sulfur hexafluoride. 1,1,1-trichloroethane, which is an ozone depleting agent today, but in silicon manufacturing is allowed because they have no substitute. It's an ODA under the Montreal Protocol. Okay? Silver is used, if you see a silicon panel, silver is the one that connects all the panel in order to give an electrical connectivity. If you want to make 5% of our current silicon solar panel to meet the energy demands of the world, 5%, we will consume 50% of the silver of the world. Okay? Where is the sustainability here? Okay. Imagine if you have to power the entire world with solar panel, there is no silver available. Okay. In fact, silver prices actually today go up and go down or up, basically based on what is the demand for solar panels in China. Okay, that's what determines the price of silver in the world today. And nobody is ever bothered after 10, 20 years after using silicon panels, what will you do with it? Where will you throw it? Lifetime is about 15 to 20 years. Okay, after that, what will you do with it? Where is the sustainability definitions here? You know, but we are wholesale. We are ready to migrate to a technology. That means, as I said, this is again the tragedy of commons. Okay, we are completely rational. Why we want solar energy? Absolutely no questions asked. Okay, but we have become completely wrong, in my opinion, if you are going to be dependent upon this raw material for making solar energy. Now, this is my personal argument. Many people don't agree with me, but I have argued with it, some people, and I'm willing to stand by it. In fact, I'm saying it's ironic that we consider silicon PV as a clean and sustainable form of energy. It's very ironic. You know, the process for manufacturing silicon will fail every metric of sustainable chemistry or sustainable engineering. Yeah. So we teach sustainable chemistry, sustainable engineering, and then when it comes to this, we say, oh, it's okay. Since we are going to generate electricity from sun, it's okay. Okay, so no problem. Well, many of the elements that we will use in many advanced technologies that we are now looking at, you know, energy, lighting, batteries, you know, in all these things, we are going to deplete a whole lot of metals which are already in short supply because the earth doesn't produce so many of them. And all our future technologies are going to be dependent upon indium, selenium, cadmium, neodymium, gallium, lithium, so on and so forth, gadolinium. And many of these metals are not available at all in the earth. I have recently, with the help of one young school student, I have constructed a periodic table, and I didn't bring it today, where I show how many elements on the periodic table will disappear at the rate at which we are consuming in the next 100 years. You know, they will not be there. You can only see it in the periodic table. Okay, those elements will not be available anywhere. You know, in fact, so I have made a periodic table where I have removed all the elements out and holes. Okay, and by clicking on it, you will know in how many years that element will disappear. Okay, and it's shocking to know how many elements in our periodic table will disappear in the next 100 years. Because of the way we are consuming these metals, you know, and minerals in our life. Well, I think sustainable chemical industry requires responsible manufacturing, but I think more than that, I think it requires responsible consumption. Because there is nothing you can do to promote sustainability if you and I don't lend a hand. You know? So it's not technology, it is not science. It is just me and you, and I think that is the basic, you know, issue of sustainability. Because otherwise, it's impossible to manage this complex problem. Okay, I'll skip one or two slides. There are lots of metrics now coming. Unfortunately, I always say there are many shades of green, because many people talk about green, and I say there are many shades of green, and some of those greens are actually grey. You know, they say it's green, but I have no opinion they are grey. Okay, all right, because it depends on who is saying it. Unfortunately, the reason is because the metrics are too, you know, flexible. You know, people just use metric to choose their, to suit their needs. You know, there is no uniform, harmonized system of metrics today in the world. So I can choose my own method of measurement to say what I am claiming, and therefore I can say I am green. But actually some of them are, in my opinion, grey. They are not truly green. But this is something that we have to think about. I always say that just like minerals going extinct, chemicals will also go extinct, okay, in the next few years. And I think I have created a list of about 140 chemicals that I believe will go extinct in the next 10 years. Okay, I've just listed a few here. Okay, 140 to 150 chemicals that we use today will not be used in another 20, 30 years by society. Okay, I just created my own, for my own interest, a list, which I believe, many of them are on the watch list already, and therefore sooner or later regulatory pressures will come. But as I said, there are many more here. This is just to show that there is extinction, just like species extinction, chemicals also will go extinct with time. As I said, there is multiplicity of metrics. This is a concern I have, because if you have too many metrics, then nobody follows any uniform metrics. Everybody uses a metric that suits him or her. There are so many metrics today that people talk about. I wish that we have a global convention, another maybe some city in the world, which comes up and says this is a set of metric that we should all use if we talk, so that there will be one way of defining sustainability and communicating sustainability across the world. Today we don't have it. Today we have too many metrics, and therefore it's a big problem in understanding what's happening in any part of the world. And as I said, see, there are so many metrics. They're all different metrics. Each one of them is not comparable to the other. So you can use anything you want to suit your needs. I think products and processes increasingly will be designed for safety and sustainability. We have to do chemistry that is desirable, not chemistry that is feasible. In many cases, I think we have to discard legacy solutions. You cannot keep improving old solutions. And this is an issue that is a pain point for industries, companies, investors, because you have to scrap and rebuild it. Because you cannot re-engineer. You can re-engineer a few, but there are few in which you have to start from scratch. And I think that's where we need deeper thinking. We have to learn to define product value in terms of a tangible cost and an intangible cost. We only today product value in terms of a tangible cost. I think increasingly, globally, you will see that people will start using intangible to load on to product value, and I think this is going to happen sooner or later. We have to be proactive rather than reactive to potentials or unintended consequences. And of course, public communication is very important, and learn lessons in sustainability from biology is extremely important, because life is, nobody talks about sustainability problem in biology, right? Only in chemistry we talk about it. In biology we don't talk about it. Why? Because biology is intrinsically sustainable. Okay? It was designed by nature to be sustainable. Okay? So we have to learn some lessons from biology. I think a lot of effort is going on in the world in this aspect. Okay? In fact, chemists have to really learn from biology. A lot of consumption models are now coming in order to drive the sustainability agenda in chemistry and chemical industry. I think there are many, for example, chemical leasing is already an idea which is started all over the world. Okay, so you don't buy any more chemicals, I lease chemicals, I lease products. Okay, and therefore it is the manufacturer's responsibility to supply and take it back. Okay, so chemical leasing is now becoming a practice in many parts of the world, especially the advanced countries of the world, and I think slowly everywhere it will come. Okay, so I can't just sell a product, I have to lease a product, so that the responsibility is mine as long as the product is, there. Okay, till it reaches its grave, I own the responsibility for the product. So this concept of leasing, which is there in other areas, I think it is also coming. In fact, the word is called chemical leasing today. And of course, you have many other things which are now coming in terms of consumption in order to make ultimately, and I keep saying this, I am a consumer. Okay, all of us are consumers, right? And if I'm in the business of consuming, I have only 3 questions to ask, and I need answers to 3 questions. Is the product I'm using safe for me? Is the product I'm using made with the lowest impact on the resources of the planet? What will happen to this product after my use? Where will it end up finally? I think as a consumer, we have to ask these 3 questions and be satisfied that we have an answer. You can't say it is somebody else's problem. It is his problem, his problem. It is the consumer has to find the answers to this problem. He has to ask people, tell me this, before I buy. Okay. And I think increasingly people are going to ask this question before they buy anything. And I think this is going to be important. I think for us as a community, we need to address these 3 questions, and I think that's why I said we need a very simple and honest communication strategy to answer these 3 questions. This is what everybody, if you're a housewife, if you're a child, if you're a consumer, you're worried about these 3 things, right? And I think increasingly they will ask these questions. What is the responsibility for the industry? I think they have to, what I call, dematerialize increasingly. Proactive engagement with society. We have to earn the license to operate from our communities more and more rather than from the government. Okay. We are believing that if you want to operate something, a license to operate, I go to the government. The day we think that I have to go to the community and take their permission to license to operate, I think our mindset will change. And I think it's going to come. I mean, you can see here, today communities can shut down their operations if they want to, okay, and it will happen. And innovate for sustainability, embed sustainability as a business strategy. It is not something for just writing on a piece of paper. In fact, there is an article which I think I encourage many of you to read by C.N.SIVARAM, one of India's most articulate sociologists today. India lacks a lot of people in areas like sociology, and C.N.SIVARAM is one of the most articulate sociologists of India. He is currently with the Shivnagara University, but he has been with many other places. And what he says is, the civil society has to be embedded part of the new knowledge society. The knowledge society and the civil society cannot exist as 2 pillars in a society. Okay? A people's sensorium of touch, taste and smell has to be translated into signs that create new warning signals. There's a need to counterbalance people's ideas of knowledge with expert knowledge. And I think we must recognize that this is our obligation. Ultimately, wherever and whatever business we are in, that is our obligation. And I think we have made a very powerful statement in my opinion. And I think it's worth thinking about it, and asking us. I skip this. There are some myths of sustainability. Many people think that there are two standards of sustainability. One for the developed world, the other for the developing world. Wrong. Okay. Many people think that profits and sustainability cannot be balanced. Wrong. People believe that economically weaker sections of society have a lower stake on sustainability. Wrong. People believe that employment and jobs are more important than sustainability. Wrong. In fact, it's sterilite. When 30,000 people are losing jobs, somebody asked, what is more important, the lives of 30,000 people or the jobs of 30,000 people? Okay. Obviously, the lives of 30,000 people is more important than jobs of 30,000 people. And there was no argument on the part of Vedanta to this question. Okay? There was no argument. The Vedanta only said 30,000 people will lose jobs. Somebody asked, what is more important to you? 30,000 jobs or 30,000 lives? And Vedanta did not have an answer. Sustainability is important for larger entities. Smaller companies cannot afford it. Is again a myth. The customer will not pay the price of sustainability. Is again a myth. Okay? I think all of them are in opinion myths which people propagate in order to justify their existence. Okay. Well, last slide. Unless safety and sustainability are deeply embedded in the practice of chemistry and industry, we may not be able to rescue chemistry from the already fragile public perception. We need to communicate to our stakeholders that chemistry is a responsible science. If we fail to do this, the only favorable public gaze of chemistry will be in our shopping malls. I'm sure many of you have seen a shop called chemistry, which people see and go and buy. Okay? That's what chemistry will be reduced to eventually. I go back to the same book by Dan Ackerman. I've been deeply influenced by this book. Our relationship with nature has changed radically, irreversibly, but by no means all that bad. So I'm not putting a very pessimistic picture here. Our new epoch is laced with invention. Our mistakes are legion, but our talent is immeasurable. And therefore, there is immense hope for the future. And lastly, go back to the history of about few centuries before Christ. Greece was a thriving civilization. And how come the civilization in Greece died and vanished? So Edith Hamilton, a historian, she is again a lady, has written a very fascinating book on why did Greece, the civilization of Greece, die? So she says, in the end, more than they wanted freedom, they wanted security. They wanted a comfortable life, and they lost it all. Security, comfort, and freedom. When the Athenians finally wanted to give to society, not to give to society, but for society to give them, when the freedom they wished for most was freedom from responsibility, then Athens ceased to be free. Okay? And the Greece civilization vanished. Ultimately, sustainability is related to only two things, I believe. It's not science, it's not technology, it's not chemistry. It is human selfishness and human greed. And if humans can overcome these two issues, I think we can build a sustainable society. So thank you very much for your very kind attention. I'm sorry I took
Solutions for Processing, authored by Mr. C.N.SIVARAMAKRISHnan. I now request Mr. Dilip Raghavan of Color Publication to take over.
In today's chemistry-rich agenda, I formed a brief non-chemistry interlude between the two significant occasions. A wonderful lecture by Dr. Sivaram. It's really mesmerizing, and it's had a deep impact on all of us. Do believe that. The second part is, of course, the launch of the book by, again, first we had Dr. Sivaram, and now we have Mr. Sivaram, Mr. C.N.SIVARAMAKRISHnan, the author of the book. And with everyone's permission, I'd like to just digress in expressing my view as to why this venue is so apt for this occasion. So, obviously, ICT or UDCP, as some of us still have a hangover of, is the mecca for all of us as far as chemistry is concerned. And even for me, who stands here before all of you as a well-wisher of ICT, a well-wisher of the Nimkar family, who's arranged the endowment lecture for today, and as the publisher of the book, released to be released later, authored by Mr. C.N.SIVARAMAKRISHnan. Color Publications, the foundation stone for Color Publications was laid at this very institute way back in the early 1950s during the interaction of our founder, late Mr. R.V. Raghavan, with the stalwarts back then, Professor N.R. Kamath, Professor K. Venkatraman, Professor Tilak, Professor Nabar, and the likes. And 3 generations and 67 years later, here we are continuing to do our best in serving the chemical industry. So it's wonderful to be here on this particular occasion, and as Professor Yadav said, it's a confluence of two very special occasions, and always two, always better than one. So thank you all. We must thank the audience for being here at this particular occasion. Makes it all the more special for all of us who have been involved in this particular effort to make this endowment lecture happen, and also in releasing this particular book for today. I must take this opportunity to also, I speak partly on behalf of Mr. C.N.SIVARamakrishnan, who due to a shy demeanor refuses to speak about himself. So I, in many ways, as a publisher and also as his friend, I'm actually echoing some of the sentiments that he might have wanted to echo, and also give you a background to actually what led to the formation of this particular book. This book, titled Textile Doctor, Comprehensive Textile Solutions, is a culmination of Mr. C.N.SIVARAMAKRIShnan's writings in our publication Color Age over the last many years, 4 to 5 years to be precise. Painstakingly and uninterruptedly, he has been sharing his knowledge and his wisdom with the textile industry, and that is again a very rare combination of virtues that Mr. C.N.SIVARamaKRISHNan embodies. One thing to have the right knowledge, one thing to be able to express it and articulate it, and it is yet another thing to have the attitude and the large-heartedness to share one's knowledge with the industry at large. So Mr. C.N.SIVARamaKRISHNan has a confluence of all these three virtues. Again, something that I believe has been embodied in him, or has been inculcated in him by this very great institute of which he is a proud alumnus. And I think that's why it's all the more special for him to have this book launch at this very institute in the KB auditorium. So thank you all for being here, and I would like to request Mr. C.N.SIVARamaKRISHNan to join us on the stage, also escort our chief guest for the day, Mr. N.K. Parekh, from Vice Chairman of Pidilite Industries. Please join us. And if I may also invite our dignitaries who were earlier here to please once again join us. Professor Yadav, please. Mr. Nimkar. Professor Adi. We have a copy of the book in front of all of them. Very quickly, this book has been, as I said, compiled over the last 4 to 5 years. It's an assimilation of Mr. C.N.SIVARamaKRISHNan has addressed these at length, using both his acumen in chemistry as a discipline and also his wide experience on the shop floor, allowing us to actually deliberate on these problems, their causes, and how chemistry can actually solve them. So right from the pre-treatment process to dyeing to printing and to finishing, and of course in sync with the theme of today's talk by Dr. Sivaram, it also speaks about how these solutions can be made more sustainable and can help solve problems not only in the immediate but also in a sustainable way for the future to come. So with that little introduction and that little background, I'd like to invite all our dignitaries to please stand up and formally unveil the book leading to its launch. Thank you, gentlemen. And very briefly, if I may also invite our chief guest for this particular function, Mr. N.K. Parekh, who is also a close friend of Mr. C.N.SIVARamaKRISHNan, to share a few words with us. Mr. N.K. Parekh, please.
Good evening, everybody. First of all, I thank the author, Sivaramakrishnan, and publisher, Dilip Raghavan, for inviting me to formally launch the book, Textile Doctor, Comprehensive Solution for Processing. I congratulate CNS for writing this book, which is easy to follow and at the same time very practical, informative and very useful to students and people working on the shop floor. This book is compiled from the articles published in Color Age for maybe 3 years. Suggestions and observations from readers are also considered in this book. CNS passion for writing books useful for textile industry is well known. This is his third book. All 3 books by CNS are relevant at this time. Textile industry, we are not talking much nowadays, but let me give some information about textile industry in India. The importance of textile industry in India is quite large. Textile industry has made a major contribution to the national economy in terms of direct and indirect employment generation and net foreign exchange earning. This sector contributes about 14% to industrial production, 4% about 4% to the gross domestic product, and 27% to the country's foreign exchange inflows. So it is very important industry. It provides direct employment to over 45 million people. The textile sector is the second largest provider of employment after agriculture. Thus, the growth and all-around development of the industry has a direct bearing on the improvement of India's economy. The government has come up with various schemes to promote growth of textile sector, such as Textile Upgradation Fund, Integrated Textile Parks, Integrated Processing Development Park, Integrated Skill Development Scheme. So there are challenges also for the Indian textile industry, such as high energy cost, high transportation cost, obsolete labor laws, and lack of economy of scale. There are growth drivers also, like rising per capita income, favorable demographics, and shift in preference for branded goods. Favorable trade policies of government and superior quality will drive the textile exports. Technical textile is a very fast growing sector of the textile. So I hope CNS will come out with the next book on technical textile. I wish and hope that this book is well received and appreciated by all concerned people. Thank you.